Sideshow and Circus, Pandemic Adaptations, and the Dialogic. On January 20th, 2020, COVID is first documented in the United States. By March, some headlines read, Coronavirus closes school for nearly 30 million children in the US. Europe to close its borders to all foreign travel. Teleworking and remote learning dominate in an effort to flatten the curve, with the exception of frontline essential workers, first responders, and healthcare workers who bear the brunt of face-to-face work into what is now considered an unprecedented pandemic. Sideshows, circuses, and related carnivalesque variety acts, live entertainment overall came to a grinding halt. Circuses were stranded around the world, and one circus in the UK offered their tent as a potential field hospital. Face-to-face encounters or unmasked encounters were prohibited as life-saving and life-affirming acts. How have sideshows, variety performers, and circuses adapted to the sudden virtual shift when they rely on the face-to-face encounter? Circuses and sideshows both have entertained and inspired, as documented in numerous works by artists and scholars, and the roar of fans in the crowd. One literary scholar, Mikhail Bakhtin, specifically associates these comic performers as critical to his concept of carnival, which is characterized by a celebration of the other, a reversal of hierarchies, freedom, hope, and renewal. Secondly, the face-to-face encounter cannot happen when there is one body. What is a performance without an audience? Audience members become participants in an act of co-creation with performers, and this defines the spirit of Bakhtin's most powerful concept in the dialogic through art. Exactly how have circus sideshows adapted to the pandemic and the idea of co-creation? On March 20th, the Bindlestiff Family Circus, created by Stephanie Monceau and Keith Nelson, announced the suspension of all live performances. By the second week of April, both the Bindlestiffs and Dick Sigan, the artistic director of Coney Island, USA, and home of the Coney Island Circus Sideshow, switched to virtual performances as a means of income, fundraising, and connection. April 15th marked the extended deadline for the Circus and Its Others conference, and even though I had only viewed this first week of performances, I knew it marked a significant shift in the history of sideshow and circus. However, I did not anticipate that our pandemic circumstances would continue into 2021. On April 6th, the Bindlestiff Open Stage Variety Show presented their first quarantine edition performance via Zoom and streamed using Facebook Live on their YouTube channel. The philosophy of the show is based on live performances, and as of October 2020, the Bindlestiffs have presented over 200 performers from inside their homes, outdoors, and on 25 stages in 7 countries, according to Keith Nelson. One performance duo, Susan Wojcicki and Kelsey Strauch, utilized the constraints of the screen to artistically frame a spinning partner with metal hoops on a rooftop, receding into space like a glass tunnel. Other fan favorite segments include Exquisite Failure, where Keith Nelson attempts a new trick in front of the audience as a lesson in how failure is key to success. Or Ask Hovey, where audience members submit questions about circus and sideshow history. More than entertainment, the quarantine edition is a place for connection, and the Facebook Live format in particular allows a level of participation that is prohibited by the pandemic. In fact, the weekly Top Chatterer Award is given to the person who comments the most in words and emojis, and it is an integral aspect of the show. Audience members become participants in an overall act of aesthetic co-creation, and it provided a needed sense of connection during this time of isolation. This year, in 2021, the Bindlestiffs will embark upon their 3rd season of the Quarantine Edition. On April 11, 2020, Dick Zigun, also known as the unofficial mayor of Coney Island, began his weekly State of Coney Island address. The staging of Zigun's first address was a visual parody of weekly coronavirus United States government briefings with the iconic funny face. For 19 episodes, Zigun faithfully shared his updates. As a self-professed spiritual guide for the community, he clearly acknowledged the fear, isolation, and bravery of our current times. The show was entirely focused on the local community, with what restaurants were open for takeout in Coney Island, updates on construction of the amusement park district, obituaries and prayer requests for local community members, current struggles, and virtual participation events such as the Maskies and the Mermaid Parade. At the end of each video, Zigun reminds the audience to listen to Dr. Fauci along with the latest COVID prevention measures. Special freak show advice was given to the sword swallowers in a plea to refrain from sharing your swords with others, and by week 3, blockheads were told not to share their hammer and nails to prevent COVID transmission. More than connection and community, the act of co-creation is most powerfully dispersed through social issues of equality and freedom, regardless of race, identity, sexuality, and ability, a hallmark of the postmodern sideshow. Both the Coney Island USA and Bindlestiffs actively made their voices known in support of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. In other public forums, such as a panel hosted by the Brooklyn Public Library titled, "Will the Show Go On? Self-Employed Performers in the Pandemic?" Keith Nelson, Dick Zigun, and others shared their resources on grants, other funding opportunities, ways to financially support oneself, and how best to pool your resources together. Similarly, Circus Talk's temporary webpage is a running list of changing resources and ongoing virtual events for the international circus community. Many questions are unknown as we continue to live as best we can while the first vaccines are slowly being distributed in the United States. Will an element of virtual remain after the pandemic? How many venues will be permanently closed? What will be the artistic and intellectual cost to our communities and humanity overall? During the pandemic, the aesthetic events in the virtual town squares of Zoom, Facebook Live, and other platforms in shared time and space, they have been our critical lifelines, our ways to facilitate connection, community, and most importantly, a hope for the future. A time when we can safely gather again without our masks, under the big top, and in front of the ballet. Thank you.